Hey one, this is QuakeMan, and this is a video that honestly I've been waiting to do for the longest time. Just in general, but granted I'm being pushed forward because of another reason, but so it's kind of a two-on-one stone in my personal opinion. So the kind of the reason why I'm being pushed to make this video a little bit is because yesterday, Monday, because I'm recording this Tuesday, Rage 2 got officially thrown and trailer was released and information was shown, teasers, things like that. You know how game trailers are before E3 after there was a massive leak from Walmart. And it was interesting because Bethesda kind of just took it and laughed at it. They spinned at it. They talked about how this is wrong and the text is wrong and this is not right and just having a laugh with Walmart because of the mistake. And I thought that was pretty funny. But at least it showed us it confirmed that that is Rage 2. And then they started showing a bunch of random photos with a lot of pink paint. To tell us the 14th of May was going to have the reveal trailer and stuff like that. Now, I've seen the trailer, and it definitely is a different look from the original Rage. I can tell that it's a little bit more colorful than beforehand. Because the original Rage was not colorful. It was very dark, drab. Back in the day, a lot of games were the same color palette of like brown, gray stuff instead of being colorful. Funny enough, even Black Ops 2 was a colorful palette, even though it's Call of Duty. It had a colorful palette than the past Call of Duty games, which was a very interesting surprise. So, there is that. For my personal opinions of Rage 2, at least for the teaser trailer, I'm not sure if I feel okay with the superpower attitude it's going for, but you know what? It's not that bad, and we'll see how it turns out later on. If it has an upgrade system, though, I'm going to be a little disturbed because I'm tired of that right now. Some games can fit it, but I just don't want to see it thrown in there just for thrown in's sake. Granted, I could be wrong, and it's actually crafted very correct for a game like this, but at the same time, I am worried because I'd rather see a game be crafted in a good way, not throw in mechanics just because it's a popular thing to do. It's why I have a bit of a. I complain too much about the Doom's upgrade system beforehand and why people sometimes hate me for it. But that's Rage 2. The trailer is out there if you want to see it for yourself. Rage 1, by the way. This is something I've been wanting to talk about because even though it hasn't been quite shown on my channel since back in the day, but something I've always have called myself and some of my friends have called myself is ID Software Fanatic. Because I loved a lot of id Software games back then, and I played a lot of them so much. I played Wolfenstein 3D, I played Doom, I played Doom 2, I've played Quake 1, 2, and 3. I loved playing Quake 3 a lot. Playing Quake 3 is kind of where I got the idea of my name of QuakeMan a little bit. I love the products that even though they weren't made by id, but they started because of id, things like that. I was very open to what id was going to be created and very interested in what they were going to do next. But as time went on, I actually got kind of concerned after Doom 3 because people were leaving, people were disappearing, a lot of the original team members were gone, and the last person that was still around was John Carmack. And as much as I love John Carmack for what he did back in the day with his engine creations, the fact that if it wasn't for him, there wouldn't have been Wolfenstein 3D, there wouldn't have been Commander Keen, there wouldn't have been Doom because of what he did with the engine creation. He was a smart person about it. And that was always interesting to research by the fact that you had this small group that lived in Texas that were making these random games for I think the company was called like Soft Disk or Cyberdisk or something like that. um God, I should have brought this up before I talked, but hey, my fault. um and we're making all these random games for these things while they're working on this other stuff. They did the Dan writing the copyright, which were able to do smooth scrolling, which turned into Commander Keen. Then they used that system to make Wolfenstein 3D, and then a year later they made Doom. And the engine difference between Wolfenstein and Doom in just a year was mind-blowing to people. That doesn't happen a whole lot. Not even back then, last time I researched. There wasn't a whole lot of times where game engines were able to change that drastic in just a year. And that is what really blew a lot. Id basically started the first person genre. And a lot of people didn't call it a genre, so anyone who made a first person shooter, they just called them Doom clones and things like that. And I'm sorry to give a weird history, but I want to bring this up for a reason. Because they were on a roll with making games. They had Wolfenstein 3D, Spirit Destiny, Doom 1, Doom 2. Even though they didn't create it per se, but they produced it. Master levels of Doom 2. Same thing with Final Doom. The two WADs they made were made by two groups that they hired, that they paid for, and then released it. They had Quake 1, they had Quake 2, they had Quake 3, and then to go backwards a little bit with Quake 1, they made a mistake with Quake 1 with the fact that after they were having some design issues with the fact that the original game design was supposed to be a melee game about Norse god and Norse mythology and things like that, they ran into a snag where they weren't getting certain systems right, and John Romero wasn't being good in a sense. There's a lot of different reports of what was actually happening with him, but basically he was they report it as him lazing off from his work and acting too much like a superstar. And there's been many reports I've heard where either he was kicked out of the company or he left on his own. Um, Either way, he was knocked out of the company before Quake was released, and they were still struggling. So at the quick descent, they decided to just turn into a first-person shooter and release it. But the mistake they ran into was that they released the game as a retail disc, which I own, that only has the shareware version, meaning you only have access to one episode the entire game. And that if you want more, you have to spend more money. So basically, you spend, I think it was about $10, $15 to get it at the retail. And then you have to send in more money and they'll give you a product key to unlock the rest of the game. The problem is that because the disc contained the entire game, people were able to break into the code and be able to access the entire game. And that was kind of the mistake of it. It caused a big dent in reputation by a lot of people because, everyone's like, yeah, a new game from id after they made Doom. This is going to be amazing. Wait, why is it just a shareware version? Sharewares are supposed to be free. Why did I spend money on just a demo? And so they lost a lot of money, I believe, from what I read reports from it. And because of that mistake, they had to partner with Activision. And then from that point onward, they were under Activision's control. But that wasn't Activision, was good Activision before they started going shit. It's hard to believe that so many companies used to be really, really good back in the 90s and then they turned shit now. And so with their help, with Activision's help, they were able to get Quake 2 out and Quake 3 and so on and so forth. But because Activision also now owns it, they also own the IPs. They got Grey Matter to work on Return Castle Wolfenstein. And as that was going on, between Quake 3 and the next couple of years, John Carmack was working on the new engine, the ID Tech engine. I believe the number at this point would be 3 or 4. And they were using this for Doom 3. The problem was, and this is based on what I remember reading up on, a lot of the team members, which have grown since the original id software production, I think they were up to the 70 to 80 people because of Activision. They couldn't work on the game until John Carmack finished his engine. And that took a long time because he was, based on what I've heard, he's a bit of a perfectionist and he's crazy about coding. And so he just keeps on working on stuff before he gives it to people. So you have artists and the level mappers and all these other positions that are just twiddling their thumb until John Carmack is like, here's the engine I finished. Work on it now. And so between Quake 3 to Doom 3, it was about 5 years it took to make it. And then they didn't make another game until Rage, which was released in 2010. And I believe Bethesda acquired them in 2009. So it's possible that John Carmack was just working way too much on the engine and people were just twiddling their thumbs again. And Rage, I feel, turned out the way it did because of these situations. Now, again, if there are people out there that loved Rage to death and think it's an amazing game, by all means, that is fine. I think it's a fun game. I think it's a relatively enjoyable game that is fun to play for what it is. But I'm going to be honest personally, and I'm sorry if you're going to hate me for this, I still think Rage is really a below average game. And the thing is that because a lot of the animation designs and a lot of the environments felt like this game should have been made back in the early 2000s of first person shooters before they got to where they are today with how some interesting shooters have become. The animations feel stilted. The way the vehicles run, they feel like some older style games of driving. I can't think of words for some reason. The vehicles almost stop instantly. When you're trying to turn or brake, they spin wildly without any weight. Um, and it feels off. The fact that the map feels very small. They're like you have a mini map when in the overworld, and anything that's like lined with this outline of white or blue means that's where you can go. Anything else on the map you can't walk. So you have areas that you think you can jump over, but you can't. And there's so many different invisible walls like that. And I understand if they wanted to keep things concise and everything like that, but it's kind of strange to give us a system to where you could do side quests, main quests, an inventory system, a money system, and yet still restricted massively to that scale. It felt like this game was being worked on again during the Doom 3 days, and it would have been released in 2006, but it was constantly held back because of John Carmack's constant engine messing before anyone could work on it. And I feel like because of Bethesda buying it from Activision, they were able to try and push that game out the door quickly without more finesse to happen. Maybe, I don't know. There's a lot of production notes we're kind of missing, but I feel because of these situations, range is a little stilted to me. The shooting doesn't feel exciting. It feels very odd in the shooting department. Some of the sound effects feel too quiet or too off. And the environment just feels bland. It felt like I was playing a Fallout game or a subset of a Fallout game than an actual interesting game about a meteor that destroys almost all the planet, and you wake up in a machine about 106 years after the meteor crashed and stuff like that. And then there's a whole system where John Carmack wanted to try and make a new genre. He wanted to create a new thing entirely, since that's what he was used to doing. He wanted to be an innovator in the game industries, which he was back then. But nowadays, I felt he was trying too hard because he was trying to make it a first-person shooter, RPG-esque racing game. I don't know why he thought that would be a good idea because I don't again, the racing feels very strange. It feels like someone's first attempt to try and make a racing game without any weight to it. And it just doesn't fit with the rest of the game, in my opinion. And the fact that you use the driving to travel in a game where the traveling is very small most of the time, it's weird to me. There's the fact that you go through like dungeons that doesn't have a mini map. You only get the mini map when you're in the other world, and it's very straightforward. And I mean, it's more in line with the straightforwardness like the Call of Duty games or what some of the Battlefield games are, or Medal of Honor Warfire, where it's so strict, where you're just going down a narrow corridor forever with barely any changes. And it makes me really sad that a company that made Doom 3, where, yes, was also relatively a narrow one-way street, but you went backwards in some cases. You had multiple different directions you could look into. You had secret shortcuts you could find. And in this game, it doesn't feel like it has that. There's a couple of secret doors that you can unlock using this device that you build by collecting certain materials. But that's it. A lot of the times, it's very narrow and straightforward with not a lot of stuff to do. And because of the shooting not feeling that great, the environment not that good, and the story, personally, I thought was kind of just not a good, well written story, unlike the past games they've done. I just felt Rage was very below average. It doesn't suck, it's not the worst game ever, but it's not a game that I highly remembered because of that. Honestly, Quake 4 I think is a more rememberable game, and that was using the old engine of Doom 3 in a different way. And that was not even made by id. That was made by Raven Software. And that was a game I used to hate on the 360, but I love on PC now. I think that game is a little bit more better in design than Rage is, personally. And I feel sad because, id used to be one of my favorite companies back in the day. They did so much early on that were very innovative before companies start actually doing more innovation later on. And John Carmack was at the forefront of this. But I lost support on John Carmack because of what he's done. And kind of the whole controversy of him leaving Bethesda and stealing technology for Oculus Rift, but that's a whole different story. But yeah, personally, I'm very intrigued by Rage 2. I I'm very interested to see what they do, but I'm gonna wait a little bit on more information for gameplay elements. What are they including? What are they changing? Like I said, they did say it's gonna be a full-on open world, so okay, cool. What does that entail? Are they gonna make it just as boring as something like GTA or Red Faction and Guerrilla, or are they going to make it like Far Cry 5 and be kind of just boring where there's just nodes you can go? Or is it actually going to be a fun adventure? Are there going to be RPG mechanics thrown in just because it's thrown in because it's what everyone does? I will give them credit that the weapon designs are more interesting because I did like the weapon design in Rage 1 just a little bit in some of the departments. Um, I like the little boomerang thing you throw. I forget what those are supposed to be called. So there's very interesting things here and there. But to go back to with Rage, I just thought the HUD design, something else I didn't bring up, I thought was very generic and low. The regenerated health plus a medic system is a little weird, especially because if you want to have a medic system with a regenerated health, you need to have the regenerated health to be slower than it is. Metro 2033 does a better job with this, but besides the point. The only I'll give one good point to Rage. Enemy design I thought was actually interesting. Somewhat how the AI responds, not impressive, but at least cool that they actually will run the cover. If you shoot them in the arm or the leg, they'll actually drop their arm or start limping to corners and things like that. If they're wearing a helmet and you shoot at the helmet, it'll bop the helmet off. Things like that are actually pretty interesting and unique. I haven't seen many games that do that often. So I'll give Rage some good points here and there, but yeah, those are just my thoughts and my opinions about this. So it's kind of a mixture between Rage 2 announcement and also me talking about the first Rage and to see how I feel about the second Rage, things like that. But overall, that's just my personal thought process of things for this video. I hope you enjoy it because I like talking about games. I like trying to have discussions about stuff. But overall, that is the end of this video, and that is the talk about Rage, Rage 2, and so on and so forth. We'll see what the future holds. Maybe they'll show more information at E3 in June. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and all you guys have a wonderful day and take care.